Welcome back to the Block Talk, where the TUM Blockchain Club is doing an initiative from Munich, talks about blockchain and its opportunities. Today I have two guests with me. So one is Shouvik, our co-host today. He's the president of the TUM Blockchain Club. Hi, Shouvik.
Hello, so we're happy to be here, and also would love to introduce the man, the myth, the legend, the giga brain, Wolfgang Albrecht. He's the co-founder of Staking Facilities. He's a board member of Solana Foundation. He's a board member of Wormhole Foundation, and one of the most humble and calm and down-to-earth person I've ever met. So thanks a lot for joining us. It's a real pleasure hosting you and and obviously you guys are hosting us here, and thanks a lot for giving the location to take the podcast. But it's a pleasure to have you with us. And yeah, would love to start a little bit more to understand how you think, how you do things, and how you have reached to this point. Maybe Alexandra, you want to quickly start?
Yes, so hi Wolfgang, also from me. I heard you from Chiemsee. I also grew up there. How did you like it? How was it?
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys, and thanks for the warm words. I think it's the perfect place to find some balance when sitting behind your screen for long times, and so I really enjoy going out there and enjoying the nature after some screen hours. So I think to find some balance, it's a very good spot to be in.
Yeah, I agree. I also know it when I come there on the weekends. Yeah, maybe you can also tell us about your life before blockchain and how you got into the space as well. We're super curious about it.
Yeah, sure. So I think the best place to start is probably Berlin. So I worked as a front-end developer at a small social media startup, and that was, I think, in 2011. And I moved into a flat, and my roommate back then, he worked for a consulting company, and they were having a pilot with Ripple back then. And he told me about it and about the whole concept of blockchain and like these decentralized networks that could do, that basically function as asset ledgers, and that you can use to transfer assets from one wallet to the other without a third party facilitating that settlement. And I think that's how I got started. Back then you could still buy XRP on their website with a credit card, so you could go to ripple.com, enter your credit card details, and then they would send you XRP to your wallet. There was a bit different time, but this is basically where it all started. And the first time I heard about the concept of crypto and blockchain, and then obviously learned about Bitcoin. Ethereum didn't exist back then, but it was basically XRP, Bitcoin, and a few other copycats of that. And so but you could already grasp like the concept of non-state money like Bitcoin and these networks being important because they kind of revolutionize the way we coordinate as people and the way we transfer and settle assets across the globe. So I think that was already visible back then, although the sheer dimension of what's possible with crypto wasn't obviously explored at all, but the core concepts were already in place. So that was, I think, the starting point.
So this was like in the year
2012 then.
2012, damn.
2012, that's
super early. So
a long time ago.
How was Berlin back then? Like, how was the space there?
Yeah, it was not that crowded yet. There were still lots of empty flats, but there was already lots of momentum building. Berlin, it quickly became this magnet for hip entrepreneurs and like an international community of people that felt very welcomed and liked the frame of the city and all the things you could do there without being judged or without much interference from from the outside world. So I think the reasons why Berlin thrived in the last years you could feel at that point, and I was there 2 weeks ago, and it definitely changed a lot during the last 10-15 years.
Nice. So I mean, like, I think at that point, like, Ethereum was not existing back then, right?
I think not.
So were there like more meetups and all happening there in Berlin regarding the whole blockchain community?
Yeah.
Like, how was the blockchain community at that?
It was really small. Like, it was basically non-existent. I think the communities I participated in, they were all like online communities.
Mm-hmm.
So it would be forums and Reddit and a little bit of Twitter, I think. But it was mainly like very niche forums of people that seemed pretty crazy and delusional at times. But yeah, it was extremely small, and like everybody from the outside would just judge you and think about you doing drug trafficking, black market stuff and all that, all these things. So it was definitely very, very early, and it's you can't compare it to the current times. Obviously, it was different, but also like full of opportunity. I think like you could feel that this is not going away, because the technology, the core of the technology is providing something really unique and uniquely different, and the things you can build with that, if you had a bit of imagination, you could already sense that this is potentially going to get big.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, like at that point when the whole crypto scene was starting, I mean, like for us now to think about crypto, I mean, it makes sense that it would definitely, it's super cool and there are so many people in this space. But maybe back then, it's a very niche, techie, nerdy topic, Like, how did you get like your conviction that you, or did you actually think that you would stay in this space for the next 10 years, like, or was it like a love and first sight kind of a thing? Like, how was it for you in the days?
I think what fascinated me about it back then is the core idea of like these independent systems running at the core of a new financial system, basically. I mean, Bitcoin was a bit different. It always had this idea of being like non-state money or store of value. So Bitcoin, like, I got the concept, but what I found much more interesting are kind of the follow-up incremental innovations that kind of followed. Like with XRP, I think we agree that the whole company and the asset itself is questionable, but like you could back then already see that, hey, you can tokenize stuff, you could put it on this asset ledger, you can transfer it in second almost for free, and like the potential to build a completely new financial system is obviously like a big deal, and it can change a lot in the world, because the financial system we currently have is very like antiquated, right? It doesn't serve people around the world well, and these kinds of promises were already made back then, and you could sense that there's something there.
And like from that point, like did you already have an idea what you wanted to build, or like?
No, it was just I saw it as an opportunity to break out of the system where you just follow like a predetermined path. Obviously, there's always the option of founding something as a founder, as an entrepreneur, and building a business. Obviously, that's really hard. And obviously that becomes a lot less hard if you just attach yourself to something that is growing no matter what. And I think I saw crypto as an opportunity to attach to something that is has huge potential and will grow no matter what. and I can, play a part in that game and participate and shape that movement without having to, reinvent the wheel and build something from scratch, which is obviously a lot harder and a lot more stressful. So, and obviously the impact you can have if you, build with a technology that is, expanding heavily and growing like crazy and just becoming a really relevant force in the world, it is much bigger as if you compared to building something in a vacuum, basically. Yeah. So I think I liked the idea of being a founder or an entrepreneur and being someone who participates in a movement which is larger than myself or my company. So basically being part of this community of people that believe in the same thing, but and also support each other. There's this idea of these decentralized networks, and it was obvious that this is not something you're going to build on your own, right? You need thousands of operators, you need a global community of people, and it's a very inclusive movement, and that kind of idea I think I liked a lot.
Yeah, I mean, talking about your company and the impact you had, you co-founded the company Staking Facilities. Maybe you can talk us through what made you found the company and also how you met your co-founders.
Yeah, so back then there was only proof of work basically, and there was lots of talk about proof of work being super wasteful, and basically it was kind of obvious back then already that that you could only have one proof of work coin, which was Bitcoin, and the other tokens would basically need to have some different method for Sybil resistance. I think Vitalik really early floated the idea around of building something like proof of stake, and there were already a few proof of stake networks in the making. And our basic idea was that, hey, if you have all these proof of work infrastructure, but this only serves Bitcoin really well, and then you have potentially hundreds of networks coming up that need a different form of Sybil resistance, there will be a huge market demand for staking, basically, proof of stake, and people that run these networks. So I think that was in 2016, and when we committed to founding Staking Facilities, the name kind of implies what we intended to do back then. So I think that was the general idea, to be at the very bottom of this new internet stack, running decentralized nodes for decentralized networks.
And how close were you to these, at that time, these teams were not that big, who were building Ethereum, and I think that was a very small core team that was doing, how closely were you working with them in the beginning, or how did you get into that whole space? And I think also after it, I think the first validator nodes were from Solana that you were running, or no, Solana was in 2019. Yeah.
Solana came later, yeah. I think it started with Cosmos.
Okay.
That was kind of the first serious validator we spun up. I think, and Qtum, there was another project, Qtum, that was really early, but I think it started with Cosmos, and Solana came later, and we at this point, there was a huge flood of new proof of stake networks coming in and raising money, so it was really hard to pick and make a choice here. Mm-hmm. So I think that was one of the big challenges, committing to a few select ones, because we did not want to do this spray and pray approach where we just do everything, which is a totally fine choice, especially if you want to, for example, serve institutionals. You have to kind of be very broad, but we always wanted to have this high conviction and really pick a few select ecosystems that we believe in, that are uniquely different, enable uniquely different things, and kind of commit to these networks.
And like how did you like meet Florian? I mean, like, just to give a bit of context, I mean, like, you're 4 co-founders, right? Like, you, Florian, Julius, and Harald, your dad. Like, how did you all like come together, and how did all of this start at the beginning?
Yeah. So my dad was just like, I told him about it, and like he became very quickly one of the most convinced people that I know to this date. So he just I think he liked the idea of being anti-establishment, and so he just liked the idea, and then he would support us a bit. And I met Julius through a common friend and told him about it, and like he got very interested as well. So we called a lot and came together with the idea of founding something like staking facilities. And then we also found Florian, who's our CTO, through Rob's. So he was a friend of Rob's and studying at TUM and finishing his master's. And then we got together and said like, we all share this common interest in this technology. And I already spent a lot of time on the topic already. So it was just about formalizing it basically and saying, let's be honest about it and make it our full-time job and not try to take it, make it a serious attempt to build something.
And I mean, like, when you said that, like, you spent a lot of time on it already, like, what was it that you were doing back then? Like were you going through like the projects that were there, going through the GitHub repositories, going through the documentation, or what was it that you were doing?
Yeah. So I think I always liked the idea of trying to take this bird's eye view on the space, like this meta view, and have a strong opinion about where the space is going, like in a very high level direction. So I spent a lot of time diving deep into the respective ecosystems, into the tech, into the different projects, and try to like make sense of all that and try to have an opinion about what direction is good, what direction is potentially bad, and position ourselves as a company and as individuals, because like the asset class itself was tiny back then. And if you would do the math and say like, hey, this can be a global asset class that competes with other asset classes like gold, for example, which is a 10 trillion asset class, and crypto back then was I don't know, a couple of billion. You could already with napkin math like understand the potential of like the growth potential of this asset class. And so the question that then remains is how do you best participate in that growth, at least as an investor. So I spent a lot of time trying to answer that question.
And like when you say that you try to build a conviction, like I would really love to kind of know a little bit more about like your process of how you go through that thing. Like, is it like you just go and try to like I know you're a power DeFi user, so it's like are you like interacting with these networks, or are you actually building something, or just to kind of understand like how you are gaining this conviction? Because like saying to gain a conviction is easy, but like to actually have a conviction, like I think there must be a lot of like criterias in your mind. So maybe I would love to know a little bit more about that. Like,
yeah, I mean, conviction is a difficult word, because if you have conviction in something useless, it's worth nothing. Like conviction in itself is not something good, right? You need to have conviction in the right thing. That makes it difficult, because like, certainly lots of people have conviction in Cardano or something, but can they back it up with real data or real thesis? I think not, especially these days where you have lots of metrics that you can take to do a fundamental analysis of what's happening in these ecosystems and how do they compare to each other. So yeah, I think it's I obviously back then you couldn't look at like on-chain metrics and all that stuff that you have now. It was basically nothing was used in a sense of like their applications and real users. Back then it was all about like potential and what is theoretically the right approach. So is it something like Cosmos where you have lots of different blockchains and you connect them all together, or is it something like Polkadot or like one of these hundreds of ecosystems that popped up in the meantime, and also most of these vanished again, but like you had lots of choice there. And basically no users, no applications, so it was very theoretical back then. And yeah, there was a different time. Back then I think you had to be very theoretical as well, and also look at the ecosystems from a different lens. Like look at the technology from, is that a scalable technology? Is that a technology that that makes sense for developers? Is that an ecosystem that offers developer-friendly access points and all that kind of stuff? And that was certainly difficult because I would say like it was more chaotic than it is now. I think now you can more clearly articulate why certain ecosystems get marked up, for example, in valuation. Like I think it's very clear, you can very clearly explain why Solana increased in value. But back then it was basically all like speculation about like future usage, and it was just a different time, but also interesting. And I think we're in a completely different spot now. Like investing now is certainly, I think, much easier. And you can't make the mistakes that you could make back then, because it was really random back then to a certain degree, I would say.
And then how did you, like, what was it that you saw in Solana ecosystem that was like very different than like the existing chains, or what was happening at that time? And like how did you kind of get involved into the whole space, and like from there to becoming like the board member and Solana Foundation? Like how did that happen? Like
so with staking facilities, we always wanted to run the validator clients on our own hardware. So we always said like it doesn't make much sense if these decentralized networks basically composed together from a few cloud services. Like if you have just a bunch of AWS and Azure and Google Cloud Compute instances kind of mesh together and then call that a decentralized network, it doesn't make much sense. And if you're serious about being a validator, it makes sense to run your own hardware. And so if you take that approach, I think the cost of these things, like the cost of running a validator, is not the hardware, right? Usually if you go on crypto Twitter, you will have people yelling at you that this thing needs to run on a Raspberry Pi and that access is very important. But for us as a company, that didn't make much sense, right? If you have a machine that is supposed to be online, you put it in a data center, you don't put it in your below your desk. If you're a serious company, you just you put it in a rack and you have this uplink that supplies you with constant internet. And you also buy a certain level of hardware, right? You buy a machine that is somewhat performant. And basically all the networks back then we had on our nodes, they just used like a tiny % of the hardware that was available. So you would have this machine with a few cores, and you would all have this RAM and the huge pipe. All these networks, they just used a few percentages of the load of the machine, right? And we had all these machines sitting around there, basically doing nothing because they had no users, and these networks were really slow, and you had to support the Raspberry Pi sitting below someone's desk. So obviously it was just a really slow network, and we always thought that was a bit wasteful because like we had all these machines, and the network just wouldn't make use of the hardware it got supplied with. And then Solana was really the first project that broke with this philosophy of, hey, our nodes need to run on a Raspberry Pi or a laptop. Really the first network that broke with that idea and said, this is like, we want to build a global state machine that really makes use of the last tiny bit of compute bandwidth that it can get its hands on. So I think that was the kind of idea of Solana that fascinated us and me. And we could install the client on our machine and benchmark it, and you would get out like a few 100,000 TPS on a single machine. Obviously, this is not representative for like a network of thousands of nodes, but you could see that this software really makes use of the underlying hardware. And I think the idea of a network that grows with hardware, grows with bandwidth, and maintains this giant composable state machine, that I think instantly clicked with us and me.
Nice. And like, how did you like kind of join the whole board of Solana, and like, how did that happen?
Yeah, I mean, you have to imagine these ecosystems back then, they were extremely small. So the first Solana conference back in Japan, I think 19, it was just maybe a dozen validators, maybe 3 or 4 developers, and then the Solana teams. It was basically like 20, 30 people sitting in a hotel room. So everybody would know the other person, and it was just a tiny community of people. And I mean, Solana in the beginning was not a really appreciated project at all. So when they first raised capital after the seed round, which was tiny, they had an extremely difficult time finding funding. So we obviously would invest privately in with the company, and then they needed at least a certain amount of capital to operate for another 12 months. And I remember them constantly asking me, hey, do you know someone who would be willing to invest? We're not able to fill the round, and we need to make it happen. We need to keep it going. So it was really on the edge of not working out. And it's crazy to think back about that time now, because like obviously Solana is now this big behemoth, and that just runs on its own, is like well capitalized and such a big movement. But back then you could buy Sol for 25 cents per token, and you wouldn't find buyers. So
what was the problem? Like, was it because they were so different from the others that investors didn't want to invest, or?
I think to a certain degree that, yes, and I think it was also in the middle of a bear market. I think it was COVID, and lots of market uncertainties, and it was just, I think, like you said, people wouldn't grasp the idea of Solana and how it's different. And back then, everybody and their grandma would do sharding, and that was kind of the common consensus that sharding is the way to scale blockchains, and everybody would go down that path. And Solana was just like the only project back then that said we can go an entirely different path, and maybe that's an even better path. Obviously, that idea didn't resonate well with the larger crypto space, but as someone who explores these ideas, I love the idea of being like against the consensus. Like if you find a non-consensus trade or investment that you make, that you have high conviction in, I think this is always like a good sign that you might be onto something, because like if the market thinks you're wrong, but you think you're right for good reasons, I think it's a good time to build a conviction and bet big and really take that chance and take that risk.
That sounds like you're like an adrenaline junkie, like to kind of, you know, like go against like this, like where everyone in the whole community is like bearish, like going bullish on that thing. I think that must be like really, you must have like extreme strong conviction or something, right? Like
yeah, I mean, I think to a certain degree you have to flip your mind around, because usually people feel safe if they are part of consensus, the consensus trade or whatever, the consensus group or the consensus path. Like, and if you are not part of that consensus group, usually people become pretty fearful, because if you're doing something different, completely different than everybody else, it's a bit scary, and you have this notion of, hey, why should everyone be wrong and I should be right? That is kind of a scary thought, I get that. But I think as an investor, it's really like you shouldn't feel comfortable doing the consensus trade over and over again. So I think if you're trying to outperform and like be different, I think these kinds of opportunities are the ones that you need to look for. So find something that you believe in for the right reasons. Obviously, conviction for no reason or for the wrong reason is dangerous, right? It's people become religious about crypto assets all the time and just hold and buy stuff for no good reason and become like emotionally very attached to their assets. But like if you find like something that is like objectively cool and valuable, but the market doesn't appreciate it at all, I think this is a very rare occurrence. And if you try to leverage that and grasp, like take that opportunity, I think you're doing good and doing something that is obviously beneficial and like can really propel your endeavor and I think this is what everybody is looking for in the end, right? It's just that it's a bit scary. I agree.
And how do you like more of a philosophical question, like how do you like keep yourself calm in these situations? Because like usually when the market is going up, it's like, you know, it's you're reaching to that peak moment, everyone is in a happy bliss state, but then like it goes down, and this is like a routine thing that consistently, it's a cyclic thing that happens. And like these must be, at least like for me personally, these things are you get emotionally attached, as you said, and you know, like how do you keep yourself calm in these situations, or like be that, you know, it's gonna work out kind of a thing? Like how is it in your head, like when things like this?
Yeah, I think it took a few years to get over that feeling. I know it very, very well. Like if everything is like burning to the ground, and all your net worth and all your conviction and all your investment and commitment as a human and with is like bound to that asset class, it's certainly scary. So I think you always need that big picture in your head, like reminding you that this is like a short-term price action, short-term market action, and that like the big picture is still like the same. It hasn't changed. Just because like Solana is now worth 10 times as much as it was last year, it doesn't mean it's 10 times as good, right? It just means that the price has changed, and there might be some underlying connection to for more fundamental reason, but like in the end is it's volatility that you have to kind of detach from your emotional state and well-being, and if you manage to do that, I think it gets easier over time. For the last years, I've been completely dead inside, like emotionally, when thinking about markets. Like I appreciate if prices go up, but if they go down, I feel nothing. I'm just completely dead, and I think this is a huge. I appreciate that very much because like worrying about prices and markets for years is not like emotionally and mentally healthy for you. So don't do that for too long.
We should do that as well. No, it's super interesting when you talk about these things. Also, like you must be super busy with all of these things, like staking facilities, Solana. You're also part of the wormhole ecosystem. How do you deal with all these things? Like, how does a day in your life look like? Are you looking at projects or only working or on your projects that you have? How does it look like?
Yeah, I think I would say that it's not about the amount of work because like I have an amazing team of people that takes most of the nasty work off my shoulders privately and within the company. So it's not about the amount of work, I would say. It's more about the weight of the decisions. Like if things grow beyond a certain point, making a decision becomes increasingly difficult just because of the impact that this decision has. Like, for example, if you keep allocating capital to crypto assets, if you don't pull out and just retire, but if you commit to actively deploying capital to the space now and in a few years, it's just a different beast, right? Because, for example, if you stick to a certain rule of sizing your positions, for example, that's obviously easy if you have a small portfolio and you can switch around and make choices there. But when your portfolio grows and the company grows, the impact of these decisions becomes increasingly large. So it's more about the mental burden of making these big decisions and keep making these big decisions, and also not falling victim to ownership bias, right? Just because I'm very bullish on Solana, it doesn't mean that I should, develop this emotional attachment to this asset and the network. It's more about staying objective, having this distance, having this high-level bird's-eye view, and keeping all of that while growing alongside the asset class. So I think that's definitely something that I didn't anticipate. For example, doing your taxes, it seems like an easy task, but when these things reach a certain dimension, obviously all these things become very complex. Mm-hmm. And so I would say that's the most difficult thing I still have to do. Keep doing the stuff I have been doing, but now with different size and impact, and keep maintaining that objectivity and sticking to the plan and keep going. Keep that perseverance up and
And how do you keep yourself at the top of your game? Because if you have to make decisions which are 8-figure, 9-figure decisions, you need to be really on top of everything, not only mentally but more spiritually as well. And how do you do you have specific things that you do, or how do you keep yourself at your peak when making these decisions?
Yeah, it's a good question. You can definitely become lazy, and obviously it's after doing this obsessively for 10 years, it's not a given that you have this enthusiasm still in you and have fun doing this stuff. But I think fundamentally I enjoy doing that stuff. So I still have fun understanding new concepts, new technology approaches, understanding where the space is going. I still very much enjoy being part of this crypto industry and seeing what people come up with. It's just a fundamentally very interesting space with lots of young people that are just in it for mainly the right reasons, are very enthusiastic about it, and I think the people working in this industry, they fundamentally believe that they're doing something valuable for society and themselves, obviously. And so it's just a very good environment to be part of. So I think as long as I have fun doing these things, I will also, or I might be able to stay on top of the game and like keep that edge.
Mm-hmm. And like also like this must be also affecting your private life as well, right? Like business is separate, but I mean like also like you have a family, now you have a little one. How do you like also manage all of these things together, and like has life changed a lot from back then to now?
Yeah, it certainly has. Like there was a time when I got woken up by PagerDuty at least once a night. So these times are over, and like we have a few guys back there who now get woken up like twice a night in the worst case. It's not that bad anymore, but yeah. So it's definitely, it has become much easier, obviously, and you have a lot of freedom when trying to answer these big questions, because like you're not dependent on anybody, right? You can basically sit at home if you want the whole day and think about this stuff, and if you do a few good decisions from time to time, it's still you don't need to do more, right? It's just you need to keep making a few good decisions and mostly be patient. Like the hard part about investing in most cases is just doing nothing, right? Because sometimes you have to do basically nothing, like I bought Sol and the sale back then for 25 cents, and now I just keep sitting on it for years. And that is not easy in itself, because like narratives change. Then FTX happens, things appear to be dead, but they're not dead. But so yeah, just doing nothing mostly, and then doing something at the right time is just, it's not a lot of work, but in itself, but you need to do the right things at the right time, and developing an understanding for that is I think what is important when allocating capital.
I mean, like usually, like it's only a few decisions that you need to make, like few right decisions that you need to make in order to, have a good investment returns over a long period of time. But the rest of the decisions, which are sometimes wrong as well, like that's part of the game as well, right? And what are your like some of those decisions, maybe the worst decision that you would have taken until now? Would love to know a little bit of that, because we always hear about Solana, but obviously you did not reach to Solana directly. There would have been some mistakes.
For sure. I mean, there was lots of stuff floating around back then, and most of the projects probably don't ring a bell with you guys because you've never heard of it. But there's like a huge graveyard of projects that appear to be cool and valuable and good technology that just didn't make it. And there's stuff like Archain, Ion, and whatnot, like projects that got a lot of mindshare back then, but never saw the day of light, basically. And then, I wouldn't say those are mistakes. As you said, those are just part of any like process. Like if you look at the most successful venture funds that are out there that invest in crypto assets, if you look at their balance sheets, it's mostly failures. It's just inherently the structure of the game, right? Most of the stuff you pick is gonna fail. And then you have these few big winners, but if you, accept that as a process, I don't think you can speak of it as failures. It's just sometimes you hit, and the other times you don't. But it's just part of the game.
Nice. That's actually a really cool way of thinking about these things, because usually, like in society, there is this like concept that if you fuck up once, it's like really bad that you have done, you know. And especially like coming from India, like usually in India it's a bit more conservative, I would say, when it comes to these things. And I think this is something which is really cool to kind of take these hits, you know, like, and being able to still stay there, I guess. I think.
Yeah, I mean, nobody knows what's gonna happen, right? Like projects, they come with good intentions, right? Nobody tries to build something knowing that it doesn't work out, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or people think that they are doing something somewhat valuable. So I think the market doesn't know what it wants sometimes. I think the market is like very immature still in crypto and makes lots of mistakes, is very inefficient, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you just need to be above average, basically, if you outperform the market to some degree, I think you can already call that a success.
Mm. Nice. So I mean, like, this kind of brings me to my next question. Is like, what is your, like, kind of like your investment thesis right now? Like, learning from all your experience from back in the days, and learning from everything that you have done. Like, what's like, are you a bit more conservative than before? Like, or how are you doing things now as compared to back in the days? So, like, would love to know a little bit more about that.
I think the current, like, tension point in the industry is this clash of philosophies, basically. Like, you have this philosophy, this modular philosophy, that is still heavily investing in infrastructure, right? And I think the industry as a whole has certainly over-indexed on infrastructure and infrastructure investments by a lot, right? Mm-hmm. Like, we keep funding and building infrastructure, and like, at this point we probably have more blockchains than serious applications, right? And still, if you look at the flow of venture capital, we're still funding infrastructure at a rapid rate, like, and that is kind of a, if you think that applications are fundamentally important for the success of crypto, which I think should be at the core of every thesis, right? We need to build applications that people use. I think this is an increasingly big problem because, like, infrastructure in itself is worthless. You need applications that make use of this infrastructure. And usually, if you look at engineering and how software is developed, you usually have it a bit, you have it the other way around, right? The applications inform the infrastructure, and the application needs inform the way infrastructure is built. And in crypto, we have this a bit backwards, right? We have this huge oversupply in infrastructure, and we have very little applications that run on this infrastructure, which I think is inherently a very dangerous spot to be in, right? Because as I said, like, usually the applications, those are your customers, and you need to be very close to your customer and understand what is their need, like what kind of infrastructure do they want. So just funding and keep rolling out more and more infrastructure is what's happening objectively in the space, and I think if you look at the integrated approach, so if you look at what Solana is doing, if you look at what Sui and Aptos are doing, and Monad, and a few others, there's a certain camp of projects that is just rejecting that idea, and that is just hyper focused on building applications that just grind for product market fit, right? And the ecosystem as a whole, like, is thinking very deeply about go-to-market and how to build network effects, how to reach users, net new users, not fight for the same crypto users. This is just an idea that resonates really well with me right now, because I think, we don't need much. We don't need more infrastructure. Like, we have enough. we need applications that people use, and we have very little applications that are interesting, I think, like especially outside the kind of a bit circular DeFi economy. So there's very little that you can look at. And I think basically the only stuff that is really interesting to me, at least, is the whole DePIN space. So all these decentralized physical infrastructure networks that we see mainly on Solana, stuff like Helium, stuff like HiveMapper, which has mapped like 26% of the global roads, and Helium obviously building out networks, 5G networks, Internet of Things networks, and scaling those very successfully and acquiring real users that are willing to pay for these services. And those are the things that I like to look at. And I think it's a very interesting time again, because like the consensus is that we need all this infrastructure, we need more layer 2s, and we need interoperability between all these L2s, and this is like where all the mind share is and the majority of the investment, and you can be counter consensus again if you like reject this idea and just focus on, hey, we have infrastructure that works. You can use Solana, you can build applications. It's hard, but just because it's hard, it doesn't mean it's not the right way, right? You need to do the hard work now. And I get that it's easier to pivot to being an L2 or solving some infra problem, because like that is a very known concept right now. Like if you launch a layer 2 or some new aggregation layer or something, or restaking layer, and you assemble a somewhat competent team, you can be pretty sure that you get funding, and you can launch your token, you're gonna have a pretty high valuation probably still. This is just inherently much easier than launching an application, right? Launching an application is just really hard, because you need to solve a real problem and acquire real users, find product market fit, and then scale this thing. So this is just very hard. And but it's the right thing to do, right? Obviously. So if we don't get to the point where applications capture most of the mind share, we're pretty lost, right? So I think this is currently like at the core of my thesis, that the industry heavily over-indexes on infrastructure, and that if you look at applications and successful applications that acquire net new users, you have a real edge to the market, because the market certainly doesn't view that as the consensus direction. It's pretty counter consensus to look at Solana and say, hey, this is just really interesting. This is an incredible growth cocktail that is being put together there, and in many cases there are probably a few applications like Helium or HiveMapper that might break escape velocity soon or soonish in the next years, and unlock this next level of adoption.
What about like, other than DePIN, like is there anything else that you see has a really good impact, or like more from the application side? Like, because usually like whenever I hear about applications, like it's always that we hear about DePIN, but I'm also interested in understanding like what are the other things that could be like, or what you think that are coming up now. There are already projects popping up there. A bit more from the industry side, like what's happening right now that you see that's coming up, and
yeah, honestly not much. I mean, we have a few social experiments, like there's gaming, but it's still like very like lots of question marks, honestly, and I think that's fine. I don't stress too much about like there not being super interesting gaming projects that have momentum, right? It's probably gonna happen, but maybe not now, maybe not in the next years. It will maybe take some time, and that's fine. I think for myself, I've kind of concluded that I'll keep an eye on all this stuff, but I prefer to look at the stuff that has real traction. So understanding deeply why Helium works is enough of a challenge, right? And then taking that concept and applying it to something similar. For example, decentralized energy grids, or something like this, or like basically any application that needs physical infrastructure and can use crypto to rapidly deploy this infrastructure in a decentralized manner. Like this is already a good enough starting point to like explore lots of applications and lots of possible use cases. So I try to stick to the stuff that I see that works, and try to not worry too much about what's coming next in that regard. I'm sure there will be other stuff upcoming, be it social or gaming, or identity or whatever. Like there's certainly stuff happening, payments, obviously. It's kind of a no-brainer, but most of that stuff is kind of chugging along, and I don't know if you guys know any gaming projects that kind of caught your eye. There's certainly lots of stuff in development, but it's not like I say, wow, this is kind of a game changer, and that makes me really, really bullish about crypto and gaming, or crypto and AI or something. But with DeepIn, I can confidently say that I really enjoy looking at these projects and seeing what they are building, kind of in the shadows, because people neglect those very much. And I think this is great if you commit to the thesis that DeepIn, for example, is a kind of a breakout vertical that will reach escape velocity as the first kind of niche sector after DeFi, and will also like feed into the momentum that these DeFi ecosystems have, and then probably new verticals will get added over time, like gaming, like maybe something else that I don't even know of yet. But yeah.
Nice. That's super cool. I mean, also like from the perspective of like zero knowledge applications that are coming up, and a bit more focus on the whole privacy side. Like, what do you what are your thoughts on this whole thesis that is coming up? And like everything nowadays, if you want to get funding, you need to add like ZK powered, and then it's like you're gonna get funding for it. But like, what's your like opinion on that?
Yeah. I think it's super interesting. Obviously, it's still, if you think about it and look at it, it feels like black magic still. I think it will get added to all these things. I don't like to overemphasize on it a lot, just because like it doesn't solve any of the application problems right now. It doesn't solve like the scaling challenges, right? ZK stuff fundamentally doesn't help you with execution, for example, right? Mm-hmm. You still need to execute stuff, and then if you're doing ZK proving after that, it's always something that is kind of behind execution, mm-hmm. and that's valuable. But I don't think it's interesting in the sense that we should all be flocking into ZK projects. Like ZK as a technology is super interesting, but if you, again, adopt this mindset of look at the applications, talk to them, what do they need, it's kind of a no-brainer that they will add in ZK elements here and there. And you already see that happening, like for example with Solana, you have these Z compression initiatives. Like, if people have a need for these technologies, they will just take it and make them work for them. But what I'm interested in is like getting to the place where this momentum of user adoption is like growing and growing the fastest, right? Being at that spot and that location and like sticking to that.
Nice. And also like if you had to like go back in time, like not like in time, but like if you have to start all over again, and you're back to your like young days. I mean, you're obviously young now, but like even younger days, what would you be thinking of building, and what would you be like, how would you like approach this whole building a business or a startup kind of a thing? Because I think it has changed a lot since when you did your things. What would be your outlook onto like how would you deal with the whole startup thing, or if you want to build some projects, what would you do there?
Yeah, That's a good question. I think the biggest learnings I had were around like managing people and the expectations of people, and like fundamentally accepting that people are like very different, and that you need to have a bit of a thick skin and not dive too deep into all these human problems, because like you can build great teams, and obviously I think the biggest mistakes we made were kind of like how do we assemble a team like that works on this very like this spread out context. Like in crypto, or at least in our company, you always have this, or you sometimes have this notion, especially as an infrastructure company, that hey, there's not this one product that you work on. Usually if you have a company, you have this one application that you work on, everything is centered around it. If you're an infrastructure company like working for a dozen blockchains, you obviously have like a dozen projects, and there's a lot of context switching involved. And but in the end, I don't know if I would do something different. I certainly would handle some topics differently, but I think the process is incredibly valuable to go through, and if you just skip that, you also skip the lessons, right? So it's good the way it is.
And also, like, how did you, like, I mean, right now working at SF, I can see like the whole culture in the whole office, and like how people are extremely helpful towards each other. It's like literally one of the best working environments I have been personally.
Appreciate
like in
it.
my short experience that I have. Like how did you, like, is that something you imagined like from the beginning, or like how did you solve this people problem, because it's a difficult thing to do.
I think that's a result of the difficulties I mentioned, right? Like we probably had a bit of a false expectation of people. Just if you give them responsibility and opportunity, they will take responsibility and also take this opportunity and just be part of that momentum and movement. I think this is a bit of a naive assumption, but certainly, like, if you find the right people, and I think we have the right people now, you can make it work. And I think we also wanted to experiment a bit with like a different working environment, and like being very flat in hierarchies, and giving people lots of responsibility for themselves, making them do the important work because they know it's important and because they want to do it out of their own motivation, and not being this kind of company where you're basically forcing the people in a certain direction all the time. So I think that it's probably just a different philosophy of running a company, but I think philosophically it kind of matches what's needed in this space, right? You need people who think for themselves and that are happy to work in their very specific context on a very specific set of problems, and being very like independent and self-sufficient about it, and building knowledge, sharing that back to the company, and allowing the company to make strategic decisions that are not top down in the best case, but feed off the knowledge and the experience of the people inside.
So is it more like that you are controlling this in like before you're hiring people, or is it more like once they come in and then you try to have that setup? Because at least for our club, like it's extremely, like, this is an extremely difficult challenge, that how do you first of all offload your task from yourself and give it to someone else, and having first of all the trust that it will be done in the same way that you would kind of try to do it, or like, you know, because like in the beginning when we are all doing the things, we keep things very close to us, we care about it and we do it. But when you need to like switch that and get more people, grow the team, that's, at least for us, like, I think that's something that we really felt as an extremely difficult challenge.
Yeah, it certainly is.
To kind of, you know, like how to give that to them and like to trust them, and that they deliver, like, you know, the project.
Yeah, I mean, especially because they're all volunteering. It's a bit of a different thing, but like maybe you have some suggestion.
Yeah, I think it was a huge learning curve for us, but I think our kind of pipeline of getting new people is efficient in a way that it matches people with us that subscribe to this philosophy of working, and certainly it's not a philosophy that works with everyone. So you need to kind of find the people that align with that philosophy, right? Because like most people, honestly, they don't want to work very independently. They don't want to make decisions on their own, like at least not above a certain threshold, right? They want to, in the best case, be told what to do, and then have a bit of freedom of how to exactly do it, but they don't want to burden themselves with these responsibilities that can be burdensome, of course. Like if you have to make decisions, you always run the risk of being wrong and embarrass yourself. So I get that it's not for everyone, and I think so. You need people that like this kind of style of working and taking on responsibility and being like also responsible at how they manage their time, for example. So I don't really care if someone works in the night or during the workday. Most of the time, it just needs to get done, right? And so I think it's about finding the right people. That sounds very trivial, but it's really hard to find people that match to such a specific way of working together. And the industry as well, right? Crypto is not for everyone. Like you have all these doom scenarios and like highs and downs and all the volatility, which is also probably not something that everyone enjoys, right? If you're not made for this kind of stuff, I can imagine it being very stressful to constantly switch between euphoria and then everything is gonna die like on a constant basis. I think that takes its toll on most people. Yeah,
I think it's about like being just persistent and having a thick skin, as you said. Like just being able to still stay there and getting things done. I think
Yeah, thanks for all your advice. There are a lot of thoughts in my head right now, and I have 100 more questions, but I think we have a lot of thoughts for now.
Yeah.
Actually, there's one question that I always ask in a podcast. Maybe you can also answer it in 2 or 3 sentences. Like I always ask, what excites you about Web3 and why should the world care about it?
I think there's like the obvious answer. I think that many people have. That obviously, like it's reinventing the wheel in terms of financial infrastructure. So we replace our antiquated financial system with a natively digital one, which creates lots of opportunity for people, especially people that didn't have access to financial services before. And we create this very open system with open APIs that people can use and build stuff in a permissionless way. You eliminate platform risk. You create these composable systems, these composable financial systems that are very efficient, very fast, and that allow you to build a natively digital economy that is just orders of magnitude better or just uniquely different than anything that we've had before. And I think also if you mixing that with new technology like AI and autonomous agents and all these things that are happening, you get this this culmination of different technological industries that I think is just super interesting. And also you have these ideas of like a non-state owned asset class that you can now allocate capital to and kind of be independent of government interaction and goodwill, which is probably not that important for us, but if you live in Venezuela or something and your currency is constantly debased and like every 10 years you're completely disowned by the financial policies of the elites, I think that's obviously way more important. But like one aspect I think that always fascinated me the most is just also the aspect of the current system not working for the newer generations, right? Like we have these old systems that serve the old elites, and in the past you had, I think in the past we had lots of opportunities always for young people. And right now it feels a bit dire for younger generations. I think it's like for most Americans right now it feels, I think, very distant to own a home, own a car, without having huge debt. And I think that was certainly different, like for older generations, right? It's really hard for young people these days to have a perspective of owning or being part of the systems that make up wealth and in the world. So I think crypto is also a unique opportunity to redistribute wealth, basically, and I think this is a very necessary function for society to function, right? Because if anything, society needs to be about empowering young people. If the young people in this world are worse off than the older ones, this is just, I think, one of the worst developments that you can have, because young people are very strictly the future of our society, and if they are not better off than the last generation, I think all the other stuff doesn't matter anymore, right? I just think crypto can be a very, very powerful force in making young people feel attachment to these systems and make them feel like they're being part of something, and having systems that serve also these people, right? And by also redistributing wealth, you get all kinds of, I think, positive effects. Like, for example, a Warren Buffett that sits on 100 billion, who's 90 years old, he will not invest with the same time horizon as a 30-year-old, right? He will, because simply of the fact that he will be dead in 10 years or something, or 5. So his investment horizon is just very different than the investment horizon of a young person. So I think crypto can do a lot of good by simply also redistributing wealth to people that are much younger, that care about technology and that care about a positive future. So by shifting wealth to this newer generation, I think we can get a lot of super interesting effects that are not visible or obvious at all, but I think in aggregate will play a huge role in shaping the future and being a positive force, just because of the amount of people that have now access to capital, have also the means to build financial applications or applications that simply leverage financial rails that are open. I think the culmination of all that is a very powerful and positive thing that I hope will help us solve some of the big problems that we have in the world.
Thanks for your answer. A lot of thoughts that I have in my mind right now. Thanks a lot for joining us. I hope our listeners also have a lot of thoughts today. Anything else that you want to add? Or?
Yeah, thanks for having me. That was fun, and I hope we can do this again sometime in the future.
For sure, we need to now make a series of this to get into Wolfgang's brain. So maybe we can have a cool name, and we can make a series out of this. And I think it was really, really interesting. And again, thanks a lot for constantly supporting us, not only through the office and all these things, but I think it's way more than that, because I think SF has always been supporting to Blockchain Club. And I think that's exactly something that the young people need, is support from the veterans, I think veterans is not the best word, I think more experienced people, I think, not veterans. to kind of give us this push and kind of bringing everyone together and having the transfer of knowledge. I think that's extremely important.
Yeah.
So
I appreciate the work you guys are doing. I think that's super important about also like the work at the university and getting young people knowledgeable about this and like making them be part of it is just super valuable. So thanks for that.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.